The rain isn't cold enough to feel like a threat. That's the first problem. 50 degrees Fahrenheit sits in a strange middle zone, not freezing, not warm, not dramatic. It doesn't bite, it doesn't shock, it simply pulls heat away from you, steadily, quietly. Most people who develop hypothermia in this temperature range don't recognize it happening. They're moving, sometimes even sweating underneath their jacket. The body feels busy. That busyness feels like control. It isn't. Wet fabric conducts heat away from skin roughly 25 times faster than dry fabric does. That number sounds abstract until you understand what it means inside a rain-soaked fleece. Every layer that's absorbed water has become a cooling surface pressed directly against your body. You're not just losing heat to the air anymore, you're losing it to the material touching you. Wind accelerates this. A 15-mile-per-hour wind at 50 degrees can strip heat at a rate comparable to temperatures near freezing. The body responds the way it always does, by protecting the core. Blood vessels near the skin begin to constrict, reducing circulation to the arms, legs, and hands. The goal is to keep the heart, lungs, and brain supplied at almost any cost to the periphery. This is useful survival physiology. It's also one of the first things people misread. Cold hands feel normal in the rain. Most people assume it's just the weather. What they're less likely to notice is the slowing of fine motor coordination. Fumbling a zipper, struggling with a buckle. That's not clumsiness. That's peripheral blood restriction doing its job, and doing it visibly. Core temperature dropping from 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit toward 96 degrees Fahrenheit doesn't feel like an emergency. It feels like being a little off, a little slow, slightly harder to think in straight lines. The shivering, if it comes at this stage, feels manageable, even reassuring. People interpret shivering as the body fighting back. In a limited sense, it is. Shivering is involuntary muscle contraction generating heat, but it burns fuel, glucose, glycogen, at a rate the body can't sustain indefinitely. A person who hasn't eaten or who's already fatigued loses that shivering mechanism faster than they'd expect. And when shivering stops, it does not mean the person is warmed up. That's one of the most dangerous misreadings in cold rain exposure. The body has moved into a deeper stage of conservation. It's quieting down, not recovering. By the time core temperature approaches 95 degrees Fahrenheit, judgment begins to change in ways the person experiencing it often cannot detect. They may feel calmer, less urgent. The discomfort has dulled somewhat. This is not improvement, it's the nervous system beginning to slow. Decision-making at this stage often becomes simpler in the wrong direction. Shorter planning horizons, reduced awareness of time passing. The trail they were on still looks familiar. The car still feels reachable, but their estimate of how far they've walked or how long they've been out may already be unreliable. Rain in the 50-degree range is also insidious because of what it doesn't do. It doesn't create the visual emergency of a blizzard. There's no snow accumulating to mark time or distance. The environment looks wet and gray and ordinary. The person looks wet and tired and ordinary. People around them, if there are people, may not recognize a medical situation developing. The person themselves rarely signals for help at this stage. They assume rest will fix it. They sit down, the ground is cold and damp. Conduction pulls heat from the legs immediately. Stopping movement means the body is no longer generating heat from muscle activity. The ambient temperature is still pulling. The wet clothing is still conducting. The math here is not in their favor, and it's accelerating. There's a particular sequence that shows up in cold rain hypothermia cases with uncomfortable regularity. The person stops, they rest. They feel slightly better for a few minutes because they've stopped the wind exposure. Then they try to stand and their legs are heavier than expected. Their hands struggle with the pack straps. Their thinking feels slightly foggy, but not alarmingly so. They decide to push on. That decision feels rational. It may not be. At a core temperature near 93 degrees Fahrenheit, coordination deteriorates in ways that are difficult to self-assess. Walking becomes less efficient. Footing on wet ground or uneven trail becomes genuinely unreliable. A stumble at this stage isn't just a stumble, it's a sign the cerebellum is being affected. The body is rationing blood from non-essential functions, and balance and fine movement are being deprioritized. Speech may slow slightly. Responses to questions may take a half beat longer than usual. These are the signs other people notice before the affected person does. If someone in your group starts answering slowly or stops contributing to navigation decisions, pay attention. That behavioral quieting is often the clearest early external signal in moderate hypothermia. Meanwhile, the body is making the calculation. It doesn't announce. Muscles that have been shivering for an hour or more are beginning to exhaust their available fuel. The shivering weakens. Then it stops. The person may feel a strange, almost pleasant warmth. This is a known and well-documented phenomenon. Not warmth, but the perception of warmth. Blood vessels that had been tightly constricted begin to dilate, releasing cooled blood from the extremities back into the core. This causes a rapid drop in core temperature, even as the person feels, for a moment, more comfortable. Paradoxical undressing. Removing clothing during severe hypothermia happens because of exactly this mechanism. It's been documented in real cases, not as irrational behavior, but as a physiological misread. The body sends a warmth signal. The person responds to the signal they're receiving. Understanding this mechanism matters because it helps explain why late-stage hypothermia looks so confusing from the outside. The person isn't panicking. They may seem almost calm. That calmness is not a good sign at this stage. Core temperature below 90 degrees Fahrenheit represents severe hypothermia. The heart becomes increasingly vulnerable to arrhythmia. Even movement, being carried, shifted, or handled roughly, can trigger a dangerous rhythm disruption. This is why field rewarming in severe cases requires care about how the person is moved and positioned. In moderate cases, the approach is different. Gentle insulation, dry layers if available, wind blocking, caloric supportive conscious. Getting out of wet clothing and into dry insulation matters more than most people realize when it's 50 degrees and raining. The temperature doesn't feel extreme enough to make that feel urgent. That's the 50-degree trap. A wool or synthetic layer holds some insulating capacity even when damp. Cotton holds almost none. That distinction, which most people don't think about when packing for a rainy day hike, changes the available options significantly. Prevention in this temperature range is largely about recognizing that moderate and wet is more dangerous than cold and dry. Staying dry, keeping moving when safe to do so, eating enough to fuel the shiver response, and recognizing behavioral changes in others. Real emergencies in this category develop faster than most people expect, and respond best to trained responders and proper medical assessment. If someone in the field shows confusion, stops shivering, or can no longer walk reliably, that's the evacuation situation, not a rest and recover situation. The 50-degree rain doesn't announce itself as a killer. It just keeps raining. And the body keeps making quiet adjustments, spending reserves it doesn't have, buying time it's running out of. What matters most isn't the temperature on the thermometer. It's the wet, the wind, the time, and whether anyone noticed soon enough.